This program is called That's Entertainment. It's a brainchild of Benny Shoults. Benny has a bio about himself, and I'm going to read it. He says, I'm an artist who enjoys history and have had showings of art in my galleries. Several people have small collections of my work. My primary media interest is object boxes, shadow box art, much of which is surrealistic themes. I have worked in sculpture, painting, and drawing. I am a picture framer by trade and have my own framing business here in Delaware. I have been a member volunteer since 2012. I've served on the Board of Trustees for 6 years, and I'm currently the curator of the Meeker Homestead Museum. A lot of work goes into that museum. He does a wonderful job. He says, I oversee exhibits within the museum as well as exhibits anywhere the society has exhibits. Benny lives in the city of Delaware in the Northwest neighborhood. He has lived in Delaware County for 34 years. Please join me in welcoming Benny Shoults.
So, well, again, this is good evening. Imagine, if you will, it's 1882. You and your wife and hundreds of others are waiting in the lobby outside the doors of the all-new City Opera House auditorium. The room is abuzz with excitement. The night is finally here after many years of building this magnificent showplace. So let us enter the story of the City Opera House and the golden years of entertainment. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. Let's go back in time, 1879 through 1934. The story I'm telling you about tonight is of a grand showplace built in the center of the city nearly 150 years ago that perhaps had no equal then and probably doesn't today. This place is called the City Opera House. For you here tonight, if your great-grandparents were from around Delaware, there's a better than even chance that they would have attended a show, a play, a lecture, a ceremony, or a concert at the City Opera House. The city of Delaware had nearly approached its 75th year as a city. The population had grown to about 6,000. Gone were the pioneer days of the early 1800s, and the log houses and wooden structures were being replaced by finer brick homes and commercial buildings. Yay. I have a voice at the end of the night. Okay, back again. Everybody hear me now? Even easier, thank you. Clothing was being made in factories. People's appetite for finer things in life developed, and there was more leisure time for things like entertainment. Not that the citizens of Delaware, I also forgot this, I'm sorry. Advancing ahead here, so that's where we should be right now. Okay, so not that the citizens of Delaware didn't entertain themselves up until this time. Many people entertained each other in each other's homes. You may be aware that many large homes here in Delaware had ballroom space, usually on the upper floor. There they'd hold dances, play parlor games, or gather around a piano and sing. Then there were the picnics at Greenwood Lake, church socials, strawberry and ice cream festivals, lodge meetings, debates, and oratory contests, circus performances, and a very early version of baseball. There were places that visiting orators, musicians, and actors would come to play to small crowds, like churches and meeting halls. In the pre-Civil War era, there was such a place on North Sandusky Street where the old courthouse now stands. On the upper floor, there was a place called Thesbian Hall, built by a man by the name of M.D. Pettibone for the local Thesbian Society. Later, there would be more such places. The demand for this entertainment was growing, and many entertainment companies were feeding the demand with more and more forms of entertainment. In about the 1950s, railroads were making their way into cities and towns and villages and making it much easier for the entertainment industry to fulfill this growing demand. My latest research has found that Delaware County was well blessed with railroads at the time. There were other opera houses, such as the one in Ashley, and there was also one in Ostrander. As I said before, there were small to medium-sized halls that could provide places for the different forms of entertainment for the people of Delaware County. The story I'm sharing with you this evening is not, hang on. There we go. Nope, we're going backwards. Okay, pardon me. The story that I'm sharing this evening not only portrays a grand time in the history of Delaware, but our country as well. A time of great achievements in the quality of life for many. People were born in the 1850s would witness tremendous change from candlelight to electric light, from horse and buggy to train travel, from city trolleys run by electricity to the automobile. Yes, many things in life were changing, and there was more time for things like performing for the theater and performance arts. The towns and villages were growing into cities. The public appetite for entertainment was a natural outcome for the new leisure time that came from the progress of the Industrial Revolution. The places to perform this entertainment were called opera houses. Opera houses were for many types of entertainment. Today, we call them theaters. Opera houses were becoming extremely popular in the Midwest after the Civil War. Many lasted 3, 4, and 5 decades, and some historical opera houses we still have today. The development of the opera house as a public theater was not a new phenomenon. No, the first opera house in America is believed to have been built in Williamsburg in 1722. At that time, strong Christian views swayed the public, and some believed that the theater was a diversion from the Bible and religion in general. These religious groups said the theater encouraged sinfulness. In fact, this opinion was so strong that there were laws passed that banned theater from 1774 to 1779. The theater community, however, did continue, often by tilting their performances as moral lectures. So the opera houses all over the newly settled Northwest Territory popped up in mostly large settlements, and the audience mainly came from the local community. After the Civil War, there were smaller cities and towns and villages that built auditoriums called opera houses. I'm going to try to go back. There we go. The city of Delaware was an early crossroad in Ohio. One of the first stagecoach routes in Ohio traveled right through Delaware up Sandusky Street. In fact, the stagecoach would have passed right in front of the barn here. In the 1850s, the railroad came to Delaware to provide a passenger stop just blocks from the heart of downtown Delaware. This made Delaware a convenient stop. Pardon me, there you go. A convenient stop for the touring entertainment companies to perform here. Unfortunately, without having an auditorium large enough, touring companies simply did not book events in Delaware. The city fathers realized that the entertainment circuit of the time was bypassing Delaware, and the city was missing out on the opportunity to bring more money and prestige to the local community. The city also wanted and needed to build a new city office building to provide services for the growing city population that had rapidly expanded to 7,000. This realization was not unique to Delaware. No, this was happening all over Ohio and beyond. Populations were growing. Cities and towns were realizing they needed a city hall large enough to facilitate the growing population. Many of these cities and towns found this model of a combined municipal building and an entertainment hall or opera house a practical way to fund the building of the municipal hall. This shows the costs that City Council came up with to charge the promoters to play at the City Opera House. It also, there was the admission proceeds would also as well be a factor, generally split between the companies and the Opera House management. Now, keep in mind, the City Council was the management. They controlled that. The Opera House found an amusement-loving public willing to pay their hard-earned money to support such a source of entertainment. It was often the only window to the rest of the world for these communities. So as I mentioned, Delaware was missing out on the top entertainment. Before the building of City Opera House in 1882, there were only 2 buildings in Delaware, aside from churches, that could be used for large gatherings. Those were the Thompson Chapel on the Ohio Wesleyan campus, built in 1852, and the Williams Opera House. There's that one. Then there's the Williams Opera House, which that's what spec is right here today. This mansard roof is no longer there. Not sure when it disappeared, can't seem to find that out, but you can see that this is a very early photo. That's mud streets or dirt streets. It was mud there, it looks like. Anyway, that neither one of these places was enough to bring headliner entertainment to Delaware. The proposed City Opera House would seat 1,050 people, thus making Delaware, here we go, thus making Delaware an enticing venue for top-notch entertainment. This shows an early poster. It was actually 1879, and this was a poster for Williams Opera House. So they were way ahead of us, but they were just a little smaller. So in 1879, City Council proposed a bond issue to build a city government building to provide space for municipal offices on the first floor and a public auditorium on the second floor. Later, the plans expanded to include a city jail and a fire department with complete stables for the horses that pulled the fire wagons. It was April of 1879, voters approved $35,000 bond issue by a majority of 449 votes to build the City Opera House and municipal government offices. Even though the bond issue passed, not everyone was in favor of the Opera House, part of the plan. You see, the religious community felt that the presence of the theater would be a den of evil. Later, Ohio Wesleyan officials and ministers even banned students from attending performances there. However, on September 27th, 1879, the cornerstone was laid, and that is still on the southeast corner of the City Hall today. It's in the back. It was the beginning of a whole new era for the city of Delaware. Construction proceeded until the first story was built, and then construction came to a halt. They were out of money. Partially built building would stand unfinished for a year until another bond issue for $40,000 and still another one for $20,000 was passed by the citizens of Delaware. And then construction began again, and it was completed in late February of 1882. The exterior of the City Opera House was on a lot size about 103 feet on William and 145 feet on Sandusky. It was a massive brick and cut stone building and monumental and ornate in style of the Second Empire. It was by far the largest structure in the city with a 92-foot clock and bell tower. The interior was stylish and tasteful, tastefully frescoed walls and the ceiling appointed with ornamental figures. There was a spacious hallways to accommodate large crowds. This was, okay, in the municipal office on the first floor, the offices included the office of the mayor, fire department offices, police headquarters with a jail, and other administrative offices. This also was the city council chambers area as well. These were described by the Gazette reporter at the time. The room is very comfortable, airy, and well arranged, being calculated in every way to answer the double purpose for which it was designed. The council chamber and police courtroom. The walls of the room were tastefully frescoed, and the ceiling presents a most beautiful appearance with its ornamental figures and decorations, which indeed are masterpieces in their own way. At the end of the chamber, there slightly elevated stands a massive desk of black walnut, which was occupied during the sessions of council by the president and the clerk of the body, and by the mayor when he was holding court. Directly in the front stands 10 handsome black walnut desks and chairs, which are for individual members of council. And in the back of the room, there was 100 or more chairs to accommodate spectators and others. The interior of the Opera House, with 2 grand winding staircases fitted with with landings leading to a large hallway outside the auditorium and the folding doors which opened into the auditorium. There was a single staircase that went upstairs to the balcony seats. Once inside, there we go. Once inside the staircase, once inside the auditorium, you would be entering what was considered to be one of the greatest opera houses in Ohio, as judged by many of the traveling performers. Before you was a grand painted ceiling. There was one grand profusion of art. At the 4 corners of the house were bust pictures of Longfellow, Byron, Dante, and Mozart, each painted in colors true to life and surrounded with wreaths of flowers. In the center, on the 40-foot proscenium arch, was a painted picture of Shakespeare. Higher up in the background, a blue sky with clouds, with figures of comedy, tragedy, music, literature, with attending cherubs. Hanging beneath the central dome was a magnificent chandelier with hundreds of glass pendants, illuminated by 72 gas burners. The Opera House was well fitted with most any backdrop scenes you could imagine. There were as many as 50 elaborately painted stock scenes that ranged from the interior of a home to a prison, to a woodland scene, to a rusty bridge, a railroad train, or a horse race. The lighting in the house made up of 310 gas jets. The stage itself was 30 by 32 feet, which had few equals. The seating in the theater was of great importance, and for your comfort had a price. Here's a diagram showing the seating arrangement. The first one was called the dress circle, which are these. Stage is up here. Dress circle, and these were all seated around the parquet. These seats would generally be sold for $1. They were red leather backed chairs with walnut bottoms, walnut folding seats. And then the next one would be the more aristocratic in taste, and that would be the parquet. And here you were seated in cardinal plush seats. There. In cardinal colored plush upholstered seats, complete with hat and cane rack, and a footrest too. If you were going all out though, You would, of course, select one of the 4 box seats, which are located here. And those were decorated by a firm in Columbus called Tom Bellows and Company. And that Bellows part of that is the father of the famous artist. In the finest they created this, and in the finest fabrics for wall coverings and curtains. You would be seated in fine chairs and behind silk curtains. These seats, if you had to ask, were $12 each. However, you could enjoy the same show for 75 cents if you were willing to be seated in a wooden seat in the balcony. Oh, I'm gonna call it a break right there. Donna? Yeah.
On that bill, that picture right there.
Uh-huh.
Wrong side, that's Sandusky?
That's Sandusky, right? Yeah. This right here is, this is a later picture. This was Gray Chapel, pardon me. Yeah, right here. Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Are you not amazed at how beautiful this building is? Unbelievable. And it just shows you how cool it would be if this was still in existence today. Wouldn't we love it? I mean, this would be the showplace of the Midwest. Unfortunately, it's not here, but Benny will talk about that. I'm here to do the commercial, which is my job. I don't mind doing it. But before I do that, I want to talk about a person. And I've never done this before. But this person served us in Delaware County as a judge for many years, for many decades. And he was still is well loved. He is retired now. But Judge Henry Shaw, right over here, is loves history, has done a lot of history research, and we really appreciate his love of history. So a few years ago, the Historical Society had these pillows made. I don't know why. I wasn't the director then. But if I had been, I would have said, okay, let's do it. So we had a couple left. And I said that I wanted to present Henry with one. We know how much he loves this courthouse. It is so appropriate that this graces Henry's home. So I'll give this to you. So let's give Henry a round. So as I mentioned, we're just so happy to have you people here. In 2019, we served about 6,600 adults and students with educational programs, activities, tours, and other events. And of course, we were not able to do so last year. We had Pioneer Day scheduled for 5 Tangi schools, classrooms, and we weren't able to do that. So we were very disappointed. I still continue to marvel at all the work and the creativity that our committees have shown as we remain dedicated to education and preservation of our heritage. In order to help students and teachers learning online, our ever hardworking, idea-driven curriculum support committee, led by Susan Logan right over here. Yes. This committee created a host of online learning opportunities, which allowed students to learn about our history and teachers and parents an opportunity to guide learning experiences. I was informed today that our Curriculum Support Committee will be presented with a prestigious Outstanding Achievement Award later this year from the Ohio Local History Alliance. This is based on a program that they created on cultural communities. This was funded by the support of the Ohio Arts Council and also by funding from the Sheets family. We were able to modify our in-person programs, creating virtual presentations on a variety of subjects that was not perfect, still allowed us to educate the community about our history. So all the programs that we had up until this point have been virtual. The donations that were contributed at our live program were significantly down last year, obviously, from 2019, and with our expected ownership of the historic jail, it is even more, have you heard about that? We're gonna buy the jail, isn't that awesome? It is even more important that you continue to support our organization. I'm gonna pass around baskets here. So if you could please put in a donation at whatever level is meaningful to you, we would greatly appreciate it. Let my board members pass out the baskets. That's right. I'm going to give this pillow to Henry. If you, a couple housekeeping things, the restrooms are in the back. Look for that tacky wooden toilet seat in the back and turn left. We have a table back here with water. If you would like some water, please help yourself. And I'm sure Benny will be back here in a minute with the program.
Maps wanders all over the photo
Oh, it does?
when you're not paying attention to it. It's crazy. And it's got that big pointer. Okay, what are we supposed to look at?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was happening.
Well,
There it is.
yeah.
I just need to keep it tucked down here until I
Yeah,
need it.
keep it ducked down or
Yeah.
something, because
Okay.
there's a time that it was wandering up here,
Oh.
and I'm thinking, oh my God, don't touch anything else.
Yeah. There went the presentation. Yeah.
But I think it's going pretty well.
Okay, good.
I haven't heard any, I left on it with.
Well, we'll, I mean, obviously we've already had one question, so that's fine.
So, anyway,
Okay.
just wanted
All right. So this thing, this is not working.
if if we don't need this.
I didn't need this. Yeah. what's it doing?
Like somebody said, get the remote, get the remote. And I said, okay. Just unplug it.
Yeah, I'll try to pay more attention to the mouse. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's so big. It's better than
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
there are.
That's good. So we got close to 100 with this, I think, because there's not very many empty seats.
You don't even say anything about the house.
Yes, yeah,
And I won't.
I didn't keep it tucked in.
Well, you couldn't see the pointer was moving. You're using it as a hand rest and then it bounces around.
Right. Yeah, I
That's
will,
okay. All right, that's all. I just
I'll
wanted
figure
to
it out. Yeah.
wanted to make sure someone said something.
Right, okay. Oh, yeah. That's the best one we have. So, other than that picture, the picture with the trolleys in front of it. Yeah. Yeah, that's probably, some of those are the ones that he wanted to put one up in here to finish off the trains, and he said, well, we're working with something else, and those are on the wall that we wanted to go. I said, but we might be able to use it out at the Willis Yeah, okay.
And we've got a bunch of other pictures.
So Francine, what you say, Francine? Nancy Fleming, Francine. Francine Butler. Nancy Kerr. Here. Right in on this. Page 17. Always do. What are these? I've had one of those.
Let me
Yeah, what's the title?
I know. We're getting ready to get started again, folks. I just wanted to do a quick little plug for our membership. Membership Committee Chair Karen Callan is right there in the back. We have a special sale on memberships. They're $5 off. And even if your membership expires later in the year, we will still honor that from the time your membership expires for a full year. So right here on the back of this newsletter, I've got plenty of them up here. If you want to renew today or sometime before the end of the month, the prices, like for an individual, it's $25, unless you're a senior, and I'll bet there might be one or two seniors out there. Just take $5 off. We'd love to have you as a member. We'd love to have you back as a member if you've let your membership expire. So please take advantage of that. Yes.
What happens if you're a life member and you get an extension?
Then you will never die, Roger. I hope that's the case with you.
It'll never happen to you.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to continue this. The next program will be a walking tour called Young and Old Rutherford B. Hayes Walking Tour. There'll be several reenactors, Bill Reitz and Devin Hardwick, and that is Sunday, October 3rd at 1 p.m. And I guess there's three opportunities there: 1 p.m., 2:30 p.m., and 4 p.m. So be looking for that. And then the next one, Ghost Towns and Stories in Delaware County, presented by Rick Helwig, Director for the Center of Ghost Town Research in Ohio. And that is Tuesday, October 19th at 7 p.m. right here. So keep that on your calendar. And the fair. The fair is coming next month. The fair's theme this year, believe it or not, which was supposed to be for 2020, like many other things, is about the little brown jug.
the 75th Little Brown Jug. There'll be, we'll have a booth in the, which building is it? The Merchants Building. So be sure when you're at the fair, come by and say hello to us and look at the displays we have this year. Also, I wanted to mention that Donna had mentioned that the Curriculum Support Committee had won an award, and there were 3 people other than Susan that were implemental in this, and one of them was, I'm sorry, Nancy Fleming, and Frances Butler, and Cindy Keir. So they were, like Susan said, they did all the work, but she did some too. Don't let her fool you. Anyway, so anything else?
We also have brochures on that program over here if you find.
Oh, brochures up here on the table after we're done. Be sure we got plenty of them. Be sure to take some.
How about the wall? Is that for 3 days?
It's what?
Where is it at?
Oh, where is it at? It doesn't say here.
I think it starts at Sulphur Springs, but it is a fee, we charge for this. And the attendance will be limited. Maybe when we do it, I'll encourage Donna to put a waiting list on and maybe we can do it a second time. But it's very hard to have a large group. So I think the groups are 12 per session
Yeah, and there's 3 sessions.
and 3 sessions.
And are those up here too? I mean, other than this? Okay. Yeah. So you can call or you can go on the website and get more information about that. But we haven't got it up yet, but it will be. We're working on it. We're working on a lot of things. That's why I love being with this group of people. We are busy all the time, and enjoying every minute of it. So back to the, by the way, I've been told that I let this mouse move too much. Sorry about that. I need to tuck my mouse in down at the bottom until I need it. But this was this side here, this side here was where the fire department was back in here. And like I said, you can see, this is actually, there's very few images of the building. There is one really good photograph of the building that you'll see, I think, later on. But there's, anyway, this is actually a drawing. And like I say, the only thing that you can't see is the very top of the tower. But it's a really, this is the best image we have of this, unfortunately. There must be some other photographs out there of this building like this, but so far I haven't seen them. And believe me, I've been looking at this for 3 years. So I'm pretty sure I've uncovered most everything that at least we have at the Historical Society. So once again, I'm going to ask you to imagine standing on a sidewalk at the corner of Sandusky and William Street, like you'd be seeing here, in the fall of 1881, and seeing this enormous building in its grand architectural style gracing the city's landscape. Yes, after many delays, the City Opera House and City Government Center was near completion. In the winter of 1882, the first use of the City Opera House was not going to be of an entertainment venue, but of an educational contest hosted by the Ohio Wesleyan University. The Oratorical Association, which Ohio Wesleyan was part of, scheduled its 1881-82 contest in Delaware. A student committee and the city council worked together to secure the contest in the brand new City Opera House. This was going to be the first use of the all new facility. The city fully expected the work to have been completed But days before, they realized that the lighting equipment, which was artificial gas, would not be installed on time. And the scheduled time for the contest, being at night, made this undoable. The contest had been planned for quite a while, and the contest could not be postponed. So the organizing student committee met with city council and agreed for a fee of $40 to use the city opera house in the daylight hours. Makes sense? The contest continued with great success, making this an excellent beginning for the city opera house. And also creating goodwill between Ohio Wesleyan and the city of Delaware. The first entertainment venue, pardon me, was the opening night gala on March 29th of 1882. A title line in the Delaware Gazette read, "Ladies, leave your three-story bonnets at home." There's your three-story bonnet right there. The first production was Mark Twain's "There's a Million in It," featuring an orchestra specially imported from Columbus's Comstock Theater, a major opera house in Columbus on South High Street. John Raymond, an actor and comedian known for his dramatization of Mark Twain's The Gilded Age, was the star of the show. The seats for this performance ranged from 75 cents to $1.50, with the exception of the box seats, of course. On the opening night, right before the show, a large curtain, beautifully painted scene of the city of Baghdad, with a banner advertising after the show, go to Holtz Miller's and Hanning's Saloon, all played into the idea that this possibly was the social event of the year. And it seemed all but forgotten that this wonderful showcase had cost the taxpayers nearly $100,000. But now Delaware had a large, elaborate cultural center. The city opera house was an active culture center from 1882 through the early 1900s. Annually, there were about 150 plays, 50 lectures, 40 concerts, 40 meetings or assemblies, and a variety of other entertainment. But let us not forget that the building also housed, let me tuck that mouse away, also housed most all the city offices, including the prison for both male and female prisoners. The fire station included a full stable for the horses that pulled the fire wagons. These stables, being below the theater, would sometimes create a special odor throughout the theater, something that caused some displeased patrons to demand their tickets be refunded. But the show went on. Once the city opera house became known to the traveling theater companies and producers, all types of entertainment were coming. It was busy throughout the years of 1885 through the early 1900s. Here shows a well-known producers directory from 1889. You will see that it describes, I hope you can read this, it describes Delaware and the city opera house. It also was paying a compliment to our city by stating, is celebrated for its cultural society and is a favorite summer resort on account of its sulfur and chalybeate. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's how you say it, chalybeate springs. The city opera house played to all types of dramas and melodramas, farce comedies, comic operas, frontier dramas, war dramas, equestrian dramas, all types of plays, imported English and continental plays, and even Shakespeare revivals. As years went on, the touring theatrical troops and minstrel shows were common on the stage of the city opera house. Productions such as Uncle Tom's Cabin was an annual event. and were numerous dramas and comedies. This happens to be, there were 3 photographs. This is from the Ohio History Connection. There were 3 photographs. This shows, I'm not sure that this is Delaware. It indicated that it was, but even if it isn't, this shows what happened when when a production company came to town. They actually had a parade down the center of Sandusky Street to let people know they were in town, and it was basically promoting to go buy your tickets. This happened not only for the City Opera House, but it happened for the circus and the Wild West show and all the other things that happened here in Delaware. It was common to see these parades. There were many local acts as well. Oop, how do we get to that one? Oh, back up. Many local acts as well. Should have been something else. Okay. Anyway, the local acts. One of them was a football giant from Ohio Westland, affectionately named Strongman Barney. It was said that he went broke and subsidized himself by showing off his physical feats as part of the show at City Opera House. Then there was, if you've ever heard of him.
After the taping of our program, we discovered this photo of Vincent Minnelli. Vincent Minnelli is in the front of the stage facing a different direction than the rest of the cast. The play, which was performed in 1921 at the City Opera House and was called the HMS Pinafore. It was the Delaware City High School senior class play, and Minnelli was Dead-Eye Dick. Vincent Minnelli grew up in Delaware. He attended St. Mary's School until high school. His parents permanently settled in Delaware as their winter headquarters for their traveling tent show company. This picture showing Vincent as an actor was rare, for other than some childhood parts in his parents' theater company, Vincent never considered acting. Yet eventually Vincent Minnelli would become one of Hollywood's most famous directors, directing such films as American in Paris and Gigi, and 34 major motion pictures during his career. Vincent's father once said Vincent grew up in an atmosphere of grease paint and footlights.
The Minnellis, a Delaware family, a traveling tent theater company that usually toured Ohio and the Midwest and had some performances at the Opera House. The young Vincent Minnelli, who was raised in Delaware and graduated from Delaware High School, had perhaps his only one and only acting performance at City Opera House. But he went on to become a famous Hollywood director. And there were a variety of other performances at the Opera House. Now I'm at the right slide. It is said that one of the most intriguing evenings at the City Opera House took place in May of 1898 with the appearance of Belle Boyd in a production called The Rebel Spy. More than 30 years after the Civil War, Boyd, then 54, mesmerized the Delaware audience with her personal accounts of her exploits behind Union lines during the Civil War. She was 17 and had become an expert using secret codes to supply the Southern armies with information about the Union troop movements. She was caught 3 times and let go each time. She finally moved to England, wrote her autobiography, and then returned to the United States and toured the country, including here, giving dramatic lectures of her experiences. Yet another notable evening on a cold February night in 1885 was a performance by Mark Twain. We found a letter from that Samuel Clemens wrote to his wife sometime that day of the night that he performed in Delaware. He had performed in Columbus the night before and must have written this letter before leaving for Delaware. After the show, a hot supper, Pond, that was his agent, and I did play billiards till 2 a.m. And then I scoured myself in the bath and read and smoked till 3. Then I slept 9:30, had my breakfast in bed, and now I've just finished that meal and I'm feeling fine as a bird. So, well, there we go. Another production was staged at the Opera House was an equestrian play called The Bandit King, a drama based on the exploits of the famous bank robbers Jesse and Frank James. What makes this interesting is the timing of this production. You see, the play was written in March of 1882, and in April of 1882, Jesse James was shot and killed. James Wallach, the producer of this play, purchased the play from the playwright and purchased the James brothers 2 horses, Bay Rider and Roan Charger, then had the horses trained to perform. They performed at the City Opera House on December 4th, 1882, just 8 months after Jesse James was killed and 8 months after the City Opera House opened. There were a few more. There was John W. Donovan and his 2 brothers, locally known for owning the Donovan Hotel on the corner of Sandusky and East Winter Streets, and he formed a concert company made up of African-American singers, 4 men and 5 women, to raise money for the Central Tennessee College in 1873. This group went on, This group went on to tour the country, including Delaware, which was its headquarters. The next one is an interesting show. I would have liked to have been there. This is the Kellogg Bird and Carnival concert. Dr. Charles Kellogg, he was a naturalist, toured the country reproducing sounds of many birds while showing photographs which he took of these birds in the wild. There's quite a bit of history on this man, but he wasn't a lunatic. He was genuinely talented to make these bird sounds that were, I guess, were just totally off the chart as far as so realistic that people really thought that they were in the woods listening to these birds. But it was more like a slideshow that they would have had in these times. It would have been more like a PowerPoint presentation, but with the sounds of birds. It was quite an interesting thing. And then there was another one here that was Blind Tom, a pianist from Georgia. Tom Wiggins, who was born into slavery in Georgia, showed a remarkable music talent as a child and went on to be one of the most in-demand musicians of the time. Tom Wiggins was both blind and autistic. And there were so many more. There's a book full of every performance that was happening at least from 1885 to 1899. Tons of these things. The Opera House was used for hundreds of local uses too, including, here's where I was looking for, including commencements at the Delaware High School and the Ohio Wesleyan University during the 1880s. This place was a common hall for hearing anti-saloon messages of the time, and a time that Democrats and Republicans filled the seats to select district and county offices. On January 20th, 1893, half of the hall was packed for Rutherford B. Hayes's memorial service. And in the early years of 1900, the newspaper article reported that Mayor Lees declared the present management not to be allowed to use the house for any attractions. This followed a show given by the girls of Moulin Rouge, at the City Opera House. It seems that the morality of the show was not something that was welcome, according to the mayor. It was also reported that the show had a large attendance, entirely masculine. The heyday of the City Opera House was certainly in the first 2 decades. Because of the uniqueness to the city, many said after Ohio Wesleyan built Gray Chapel in 1893, there was less a demand for 2 large theaters. The world was changing, going into the 1900s, and there was talk of some Ohio boys fooling around with trying to fly. Another Ohioan was being elected as president. The United States was adding the Hawaiian Islands to its territory. Women's voices were stronger than ever with women's suffrage movement. It was a time of much social and political change. The long-time availability of alcoholic beverages was being challenged by the pro-Christian organizations. Immigration was at an all-time high. More people were moving from farms to towns and cities. The new urbanization of America was being realized. Those urban dwellers worked in factories and stores to accommodate the growing population. Those same city dwellers were seeking off-hour entertainment. They had money in their pockets, and places like the City Opera House was there for them to enjoy. There was one major change in transportation in the first years of the 20th century that is often forgotten. It would change business, social, and cultural ways, not only for Delaware, but the whole state. It was the introduction of the Interurban Railway in 1902. This rail service running between Columbus, Delaware, and Marion made multiple stops and ran back and forth several times. This continuous service was different than the railroad passenger train service, which you could also get out of Delaware, but it just didn't run as often. Today, we would call this a commuter train. The interurban railway between Columbus and Delaware and Marion would make access more common between cities and towns. The electric railway could speedily get you to Columbus in about an hour. This same trip by horse and buggy would have been an 8-hour journey. Suddenly, you could travel from Columbus to Delaware or Delaware to Columbus and make it a day trip. Of course, you could have done this by train, but the interurban offered continual round trips every day, making it possible for you to go to either city in the morning, have dinner, and catch a show, and still be home that night. In fact, in 1907, the Delaware Gazette, in an advertisement in the Delaware Gazette, had an interurban schedule and an announcement that said the CDNM would be running a theater car that would return you to Delaware by midnight after the show. So the theater goers to travel to Columbus or Marion to see shows might not be performed in Delaware. And of course, people from Columbus and Marion could come to Delaware and catch a show at the City Opera House as well. Things were really changing. There was also a new form of entertainment becoming widely available that would add to the competition for the City Opera House: the coming of the moving picture. Interestingly enough, it seems that this form of entertainment was presented on October 6th, 1896 in the City Opera House. It was the city of Delaware's first public exposure to a moving picture called Edison's Vitascope. My research shows that there was a Dr. J.N. Hoyt, an optometrist, who opened the first moving picture house in Delaware in 1907. It was called Dreamland. It was located at 30 South Sandusky Street. Later, the name was changed first to the Theatorium and again to Suburba. Suburba moved to 5 South Sandusky Street, which is where Amato's is today. And the only photograph that we have is this one in the 1913 flood of the South Block, and Suburb is right there. I wanted to go backwards here. Hang on, let me see. Oop. This is the other picture I was talking about that is very telling. This is one of the few photographs of the City Opera House. And what makes this additionally special is the fact that it shows the city trolley cars, the dinkies as they were called, out in front. These same tracks also, the interurban ran down these same tracks. This was the actual station for the interurban as well. So it was, as you can see, it was right across the street from the Opera House. So it got its use. I'm sure many people came just to see performances at the Opera House. Then in 1908, the Grand Theater opened at 5 North Sandusky Street. This is where the Son of Thurman's is today. It was owned by a prominent Delawarean by the name of Park Byers, who was a tightrope walker in his younger days in the circus. And in December of 1908, the Star Theater opened across the street at 24 North Sandusky, where Fresh Start Bakery is today. There may be someone here who saw movies at the Star in the 1950s, not way back then, but in the 1950s, because it did, I think it was 1954 or 53 that it did finally close. There would be 2 more movie houses that would open. One, this is an interesting picture that we actually just got. This one was a sister theater to the Star. It was called the Star Dome. It was an open air theater that was built in 1914. This was where the police station and parking lot is today. This was built there. It was a pretty temporary building, but it was meant to be an outdoor theater. And like I say, it survived for about a year. I have a theory that the Star was trying to get ahead of the Strand. That was just a few years before the Strand got built, and that is that other theater, the Strand, which was opened in 1916. The Strand was the largest of the theaters, holding 800. The theater was fitted with the latest movie theater, the latest that movie theaters had to offer at the time. All these small theaters also used the stages for vaudeville acts, which would have also appeared at the City Opera House. Steadily, though, the Opera House lost its appeal. Audiences began to diminish. Finally, in 1920, the state condemned the upper floor and theater of this grand structure. It was a most sad day for Delaware. This towering structure of a grand time in the history of the city was now a burden to its citizens. The theater portion of the building would be left abandoned until 1930, when a group of interested theater people, led by members of the faculty of Ohio Wesleyan, began to make negotiations with the city and contract to sign for $14,000 to cover the cost of remodeling. It was back, nearly in its original state, including some space made for Ohio Wesleyan drama classrooms. This was, by the way, I'm behind on my slides. This is the front of the Strand Theater as it was in 1934, but this was the original front. It obviously later changed several times. In a program for the rededication of the new or reopened City Opera House, in the program for the rededication on February 13th, 1930, Dr. John T. Marshman, who was at the time led the Department of Speech at Ohio Wesleyan, wrote, "When a succeeding generation in its pride of place forgets the contributions of a preceding generation, It is guilty of the grossest ingratitude, and itself will sing into oblivion. This is a real good statement about preservation. I don't think it could be said any better. All was going well for the remodeled City Opera House. After the remodeling, it was affectionately referred to as the Little Theater. The dramatics of the city were back. And then on the cold morning hours of Saturday, February 24th, 1934, at 1:30 a.m., the fire trucks had been called to extinguish a fire at Zach Davis Seed Store on the first block of West William Street in downtown Delaware. At 2:30, Police Captain Frank Lyckabaum was at the scene of the seed store fire when he returned to his office below the City Opera House and heard screams from two men who earlier asked for shelter in the jail overnight. There was smoke coming out of the basement. Captain Frank Lyckabaum saved the two men and ran back to the seed store to alert the firemen to rush back to the firehouse. He was only a block away. At that time, the firemen arrived. The flames were shooting through the floors and the cells and everywhere. It was soon easy to see that the pine interior could not be saved. And the firefighters worked to keep the fire from spreading to other downtown buildings. The Delaware firemen were assisted by Columbus firemen who drove 35 minutes in below freezing temperatures. Within an hour, the building was overcome by flames and could not be saved. When the sun rose over Delaware the next morning, the once grand and beautiful centerpiece of Delaware was an empty shell of stone and rubble, and the drama was gone. After this tragic loss, here's two photographs of them dynamiting the tower down as they were doing the demolition to clear the lot for the new City Hall. Oh, that was the end of the Opera House and the beginning of another time in Delaware. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take questions. Yeah.
Did they ever discover what started the fire?
I've looked, I've looked and looked and looked, and so far I have not seen an official report. We do have, there was conflicting news reports from the Columbus Dispatch and the Gazette. The Columbus Dispatch said that all the records were destroyed in the building, and the Gazette said that it was not, that the vault that had the records in it were secure. The door was melted, but the records made out okay. There were city council reports as part of that, which we still have today. And I think when I get deeper into this, I think I'll find that cause in those records, because I'm sure it had to be reported back to city council, but I have not found that yet. I'm hoping to. I've done this presentation a couple other times, and that's the same question, and I want to know it too, because I mean, if by the reports that from the newspaper, I would suspect the two vagrants that asked for shelter in the jail, but I didn't see that in any of the newspaper articles, so it seems suspicious to me, but I don't know. Anything else?
Did they survive?
Yes, they did. They did survive, thanks to the police captain who was on night duty that night. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for attending. We appreciate your support.